can bring people on this podcast, players, former players, coaches, and people can see a different side of them that they've never gotten to see before. Welcome into the first episode of Behind the Wall podcast with LANDON TENGWALL here. I am joined by my first guest, Jim Galante. For those that know what I've been doing here in my broadcast journalism career, Jim kind of gave me my start on his channel, Keystone Sports Network. And that we've been doing every Sunday. We've been doing, Penn State football recaps and a lot of college football, NIL, transfer portal talk. So he's given me a great opportunity. So I figured no one better than him to start this podcast off with.
Well, thanks a lot. First of all, Landon, congratulations on Behind the Wall with LANDON TENGWALL. That's fantastic. I'm absolutely honored to be your first guest on the show. First question. What's it going to be all about?
Yeah, so I kind of had this idea after working with Jim for a couple months and talking Penn State football. It was something I really enjoyed, and I'm a broadcast journalism major, so this is always something I've really been passionate about. And then when everything went down, I said, okay, I need to find a plan B, go a different route, find something else I'm really passionate about. And throughout my career, I always enjoyed talking to the media. Coming up, even when I was a high school recruit, any person that would hit me up in media for Penn State, Maryland, whatever school it was, I was always, yes, let's do an interview. I just want to chat. Any type of fans get to know me. I just want to get that exposure out there and let people know what I'm about and, what type of person I am. So when really Jim kind of approached me about the idea of beginning my own podcast here, I was really excited. I didn't know how it was going to work, how it was going to go, but couple months of planning, 3 or 4 months in the making, and here we are. But as far as what I vision for Behind the Wall, it's going to be, fresh new content that I feel like, especially in this Penn State community, in the state college community, we haven't seen a ton of. And we've seen new creators, State Media, and a couple other people for the Bloggy, which is a friend of the show, do some really good work. But I want to give that behind the scenes access to these fans and show them what these players, what these coaches, administration are really about outside of just football on Saturdays, outside of the basketball game each night. So I plan on bringing on a bunch of different lettermen, current players, current coaches, that type of stuff to give fans the real raw stuff behind the scenes and get an understanding of what this all takes for someone to come in every single day. I want to bring on, a current Penn State football player. Nick Dawkins is actually going to be guest. I'm giving a little preview into episode number 2. That's going to be my guest for next episode. And I want to show these people what these football players are doing outside of practice and lifting every day. What else goes into being an athlete? And then also telling their story. I think so often that you see these guys out there on Saturday and you don't understand what they've been through to get to that point. I think, and especially with NIL, the ability to tell an athlete's story is so much easier now than before. I think before NIL, it was kind of just a name behind a face mask. And sometimes you didn't even know what these people looked like because you only saw them on Saturdays and you only saw them with their helmet on. So I'm really excited to be able to kind of peel back the curtains and tell people's story from a different vantage point too, because me being a former player and then also relationships that I have with these athletes and coaches and so forth.
And especially offensive linemen who really remain anonymous. Now, Landon, I think most of our listeners know your story of what happened. For those couple who might not, if you don't mind, just tell me a little bit about that transition when you had to finish your football career prematurely.
Yeah, so this past August, I had to retire from football, and it was obviously a really difficult time for me. Football had been something I've been working towards, my whole life. Getting to the NFL was my dream. It was my goal. But I did always have in the back of my mind that I was more than a football player. I always felt that I had a lot more to accomplish and so much more I could offer to places like Penn State, to my community at home, that type of thing. So I was so passionate about finding another way to get involved after I retired from football. So I took some time off, and then I had some guy named Jim Galante come and approach me about starting, joining his podcast every Sunday. And that's where I really think I started to find my passion in the media realm. And, I think this Penn State community has so much opportunity to offer, especially for content creators and someone like me, where I have all these people that are willing to come on my show, these people's stories that I can tell from a different perspective than, say, just some random media member for 24/7. So to have that perspective, I'm just really excited to present that to the fans, and then allow them to get a different side of all these people. So that's kind of where my journey has taken me. But going back, Penn State has been absolutely fantastic to me. I will always remain on that Coach Franklin, Coach Trout, the whole administration has been nothing but fantastic. And when I decided to step away, they were 100% supportive, and still to this day reaching out to me, making sure I'm okay, making sure I have what I need. So it's really nice to have that support. And then not even to mention the amount of lettermen, the amount of business owners in State College reaching out saying, hey, if you ever need anything, an internship, a job, someone to talk to, just call my phone. That type of support, I do not think you get anywhere else. And matter of fact, I know you don't get that anywhere else. I think in a similar situation, if someone were to retire from a football team, say down in Georgia, Alabama, they'll say, okay, sounds good, but it's time to move on. We don't really, we're moving on to the next guy. We don't care too much. And it couldn't be more opposite here at Penn State. So I'm forever thankful that I chose this university, and they still continue to present me with opportunities to help further myself down this road.
It's not just next man up on the football field. And if you don't mind, I'm going to share a little bit of a story about you. The first time we met in person, we went out to lunch, which you figure would be about hour or so. Well, 3.5 hours later, after the two of us talking and telling stories, and the one thing that impressed me most, and this was your quote when I asked you about having to medically retire, and your answer was, Jim, I knew I was going to have to make a transition at some point. It's just a little bit earlier than I ever expected. And I don't know if you realize how much that impressed me, how mature you were to be able to approach things that way and be ready to move on to your next career. In fact, I think you even talked about this gives me a head start on it. And right then I thought, this is a guy who's going to go somewhere with this. I want him part of my team. And so tell me a little bit more about what makes you want to be on this side of the table, the media side, which is usually a bunch of guys like me who would never even come close to a collegiate field.
Right. Well, I mean, the first thing is, like, I'm always scrolling on Twitter, on YouTube, I love just clicking on interviews with guys. And one of my favorite things is, I don't know if anybody's ever seen this, but the Minnesota Vikings, they had a defensive end that would go around the locker room and ask his teammates questions like, who would you least like to date your sister? That type of thing. And I would always watch those, and those would always elicit some really good responses. But I just love being around the locker room aesthetic, the being around the guys. And it was one of those things I said, this still offers me that opportunity to be around that, to be involved. And then I feel like I'm even an added asset in the fact of what I spoke to earlier, is that I can bring people on this podcast, players, former players, coaches, and people can see a different side of them that they've never gotten to see before. And I think a lot of times media members, and especially here at Penn State, if you're on 24/7 or The Athletic, it's a lot of almost like poking and prodding, and no one really wants to work with you. They're just giving you coach speak. And what I mean by coach speak is just those answers that are just 100% politically correct and nothing wrong, and you're never saying anything outside of the box. And I think sometimes that can get a little stale for the viewers, for the fans. And it's like, okay, I just hear this player talking about what we're doing at practice, and we're doing a great job, and we're working hard every day. Well, no, I want to bring you in, and yeah, we can talk a little bit about that. But tell me about how you came up. Tell me about your high school experience. What was your recruitment like? What were those funny stories from when you first got here, and those little welcome to college football moments that we always like to talk about. That's the type of stuff that I'm excited to access, and then especially bringing coaches on. I think that's someone people that we don't hear from too often, and we really kind of alienate them and look at them like, they get a little pat on the back when you get a win, but for the most part, they're taking the brunt of all the blame when that comes down the pipe. And I'd love to bring a couple different coaches on and say, hey, this guy, here's his family. He's a loving family man. This is what he likes to do outside of football. Hey, he likes to go hunt, shoot the basketball around, play golf. And then you're able to kind of familiarize yourself with that coach, with that player, and say, hey, I do that too. They're just like me. And I think, and I actually talked about this with a couple of different people recently, is that I think sometimes there's that disconnect. Growing up, I would look at NFL players like they were just absolute gods, like they were otherworldly. And I think sometimes people forget that they're just humans, just like us. They live normal lives, they have families, and they go home and watch YouTube and whatever, put on Netflix. And so I think some of that gets lost, and that's one thing I really have enjoyed about all these players creating podcasts now and retired NFL, NBA players. But I think we need that a little bit more on the collegiate level. I don't think we have anybody kind of telling these people's stories and presenting it to the fans. Like I said, I think it's a lot of investigative journalism and kind of just going around and trying to find a story and get someone in trouble. That's kind of more the vibe I get from collegiate journalism. And I want to take a different spin. I want to take that, Shannon Sharp, Chad Ochocinco type vibe and bring that to the Penn State, the Penn State atmosphere, and bring players on and coaches like I spoke to. So I'm really excited for what this is going to be. And then also I'm really excited to do film breakdowns, go in, give the fans kind of an inside look. And obviously I won't be sharing anything that the team is doing right now. No inside information.
Why not?
But
Come on, that's what we're looking for, Landon.
your little tidbits here and there, and nothing too obvious. But I want to be able to bring those breakdowns and even bring guys in, have them break down some film with me, talk over their technique and what they're trying to accomplish on this play. And I think giving fans that type of insight is going to be something really refreshing, something new, and something they haven't really seen before at the collegiate level.
Well, I think if folks have listened to our show when you're on the show, they're getting a taste of that feeling already. You've told us so many stories. We've had shows where we've dedicated them to things that normally don't get talked about. What is a road trip like? What's it like to flight? What kind of foods do you eat? We've done shows about, the off season, what those days are really like. And we recently talked about your recruiting history, which was a lot of fun. Maybe you could share with our listeners right now a couple of those stories, which were really enjoyable, and I think will give our listeners a taste of what you're talking about.
Well, I'll start off with kind of how I started with Penn State. I came up to Penn State my 8th grade spring, summer, going into my 9th grade year, my freshman year of high school. That fall of 8th grade was interesting. I was a wide receiver, Jim. I was out there running deep post patterns. I've caught one touchdown in my whole football career. I have it in my favorited on-camera roll, so I can pull it out at any second. If someone questions me, I say, here.
And how old were you for that?
I was 13 years old.
What was that like?
I'm 21 now, so this is that's 8 years ago.
And we're still talking about it.
It's still in the camera roll, and I have it very accessible. I can get to it in 30 seconds. But no, going back. So I was a wide receiver. I was 180 pounds, and I wanted to be one of those fast guys out there on the edge, playing DN, wide receiver, that type of stuff. So after my fall 8th grade year, my last year of junior high, me and my dad sat down, and we said, okay, we got to come up with a plan because I don't think you're going to get anywhere running routes. It's not going to work. You're too slow. I think I was probably running maybe a 5.4 at wide receiver. So, yeah, Jim, I don't think that's working either. So we decided to completely transform my body. I was going to be an offensive lineman, started studying technique, and then put on some weight. That was the biggest thing. I was constantly eating protein shakes, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches before bed, sometimes 2 of them. And shout out to my grandfather, David Tengwall. He was getting up every morning at 5 a.m. and taking me to the local YMCA. Wow. So I would work out in the morning before school because my school didn't start till 9:15. I would wake up, work out, come home, eat, go to school, and constantly having snacks too. I'd have Cliff Bars, sandwiches. I'd get kicked out of class sometimes. They're like, you can't eat in here. I'm like, look, I'm trying to do something here. I'm trying to get better. Let me do my thing. So I was putting on a lot of weight, working out all the time. And next thing you know, the spring rolls around. I'm starting to get set up at my high school that I'm going to go to. I'm going to a private high school, and it was actually a high school with if anybody's familiar with Blake Corum, Michigan running back, Keziah Izzard, he's here on the D line here at Penn State. they were both 5 stars at the high school I was going to, St. Vincent Pallotti High School. So there was already a lot of eyeballs on the high school, on the games, on the film. So I figured, hey, well, what a better place than this to go get my start. So they come up to the Penn State big man camp, and Penn State does a fantastic job putting on a big man camp and 7-on-7 camp during those June and May months when high schools are off. And kind of bring up high school kids, get a lot of competition. I remember my high school in 7-on-7, they went against Micah Parsons, Julian Fleming, who's now here. So you get to go against guys you wouldn't normally get to go against in that high school world. And I was an 8th grader, and I come up and I start to do well in the one-on-ones. There, you're doing O-line, D-line, one-on-ones. And at this point, I'm about 280 pounds, 6'5", going into 9th grade.
So that's what, 13, 14 years old?
Yeah, about 14 years old, 6'5", 6'6". I had hit my growth spurt in 7th grade, so I was already 6'5". I was already a tall kid. And but I packed all that weight on in about 4 or 5 months and get up to Penn State, and this is my first time really doing anything offensive defensive line related in a competitive setting. So I start to win a couple reps, and I don't have very good technique, but I'm winning because I'm big and I'm strong. Well, I get brought up to the top group, the A group, and Coach Limegrover at the time was the Penn State offensive line coach, and he sets me up and he says, hey, I want you against this kid right here. And I don't know anything. I don't know anybody. I'm not familiar with the recruiting world or Penn State really at all at this point. And I go, he blows the whistle, and I win the rep pretty handily. And next thing you know, everything finishes up. We get awards. I end up winning one of the MVP awards. And Coach Franklin comes up to me, and he's talking to me, and obviously I'm just elated. I mean, this is the first real college interest that I've had. And he goes, you know who you just went against? And you beat him on the one-on-ones. And I said, no, Coach. He said, well, that was Yetur Gross-Matos. He's actually our top recruit coming in at the defensive end position. And he had a big smile on his face. He said, that's a pretty good accomplishment to start out your high school career here. So, we'll definitely be in touch in the future. So that was my start. And for those of you that don't know, Yetur obviously went on to have a great Penn State career, got drafted in the first round, and actually just signed with the 49ers. And I actually told this story on the Lions Den podcast a couple weeks ago, and it got posted to Instagram. And I look in the comments, I'm tagged in the comments, and it's Yetur, and he's like, man, I don't remember this at all. He's like, I need to see the video right now. I responded, I say, hey, it's in the Penn State archives somewhere, but that's I can claim that a little bit now that I'm retired. I feel comfortable bragging about my high school endeavors, beating Yetur.
So that's like your one touchdown catch. That's another memory that you got to keep forever. You got to keep that real close on your video.
I got to keep it clearly. I'll have to send it over Yetur also as well. Show him a little bit of evidence. But that's kind of how I got my start here at Penn State, and then very quickly after that, got offered by them, and it was pretty much no going back after that point. I think someone at 24/7 had told me that I visited Penn State 23 times in my high school career. Now, granted, they are only about a 3-hour drive away, but that's a lot for a recruit to come up, and I don't think it was too much of a secret to anybody at doing those crystal balls at 24/7 that I was coming here to Penn State.
Well, it's like the old saying about recruiting. Don't listen to what a recruit says. Watch what they do. And usually those visits, that's an indication. Mm. Now, we can't get through a podcast like this without talking about the team itself, the current team. Since you're an offensive lineman, that's where your expertise is. How about a little bit of an overview? That's a group in flux. Both tackles are gone. The center is gone. That's a lot of changeover. Could you make sense of what's left, and who are the guys that us fans should be looking for on the offensive line as standouts coming up?
Right. Yeah, I think first off, obviously the guys that we were losing were huge pieces of this offensive line, but I think we also need to give them credit of where this offensive line is now at. When I first got here, and even before that, the Penn State offensive line was just a punching bag for the fan base. I mean, when I was a recruit, I would go on Twitter, and it was just laying into Limegrover, laying into the whole offensive line. Why can't they block anybody? So to be where we are at now,
I was not one of those guys.
I won't. I'm not. I'm not saying Jim. I'm not saying. I'm not blaming. I'm not pointing any fingers at anybody. But it was definitely.
There's no need for you to look back through my history and social. Okay, so
All right, we're doing a
just
whole.
trust me.
We're
Just
doing.
trust me.
We're doing a whole overview of Jim Galante's Twitter social media history. But so I think those guys deserve a big credit. Caden Wallace, Olu Fashanu, Hunter Norzad coming here from Cornell. Did a really good job not only building this offensive line to be great, but sculpting the offensive line room to where these younger cats have an understanding of, okay, this is the standard that is set and nothing below that is going to be accepted. So I do want to give a shout out to those guys, and I think all of them are going to have lengthy careers in the NFL, and all of them are climbing up the draft boards. But looking at this current Penn State offensive line, I'll go left to right. Right now, we got Drew Shelton at left tackle, and it was just announced that he is out for the spring with an injury, so he's going to miss spring ball. Definitely hurts that development a little bit. I'm not as worried because he's been playing since his freshman year. If anybody remembers, when Olu Fashanu went down against Ohio State, he came in and finished off those last 4 games of that 2022 season when he was a true freshman. That's not easy to do against Big Ten opponents late in the season and come in, handle your way as a freshman, and not let up any sacks. So definitely got a little playing time last year. Didn't get to see as much because Olu stayed healthy, but definitely someone I'm excited about. Hurts not being able to see him in spring ball, but got some good depth building here at Penn State on the offensive line. Moving inside a little bit at left guard, we saw a mixture between J.B. Nelson and Vanga Ioane. I think both really special guys. Vanga is a massive man, 6'4", up in the 360s, 370s. Jim,
Oh wow!
I don't want to see
that big now.
Yeah, I don't know if I want to see him on any type of power pull, anything like. And Andy Kotelnicki is known to put offensive linemen in motion and let them go kill someone like Trent Williams does. So I don't know. Vanga might be a good candidate for that. But so he's a big, powerful run blocker, and then JB. Both actually honorable mention all Big Ten, so definitely in good hands there. I think they're going to have a little bit of a competition. But jumping over to that other guard, Sal Wormley is coming into his 6th year, decided to come back to Penn State and finish off what he started. I think it'll be good to have 3 guards that are all able to start because Sal being in that 6th year, that's a lot of wear and tear on the body, Jim. We're talking that's 6 spring balls, that's 6 seasons, that's 6 summer camps. I mean, that's 6 winter workouts. That's intense on the body, and the body can't take that beating for too long. So I think getting some reps off Sal Wormley is going to be really important, and having either JB or Vanga to be able to hop over at that right guard and kind of have a 3-man rotation at the left guard, right guard position is going to be really good for this Penn State offensive line. And what we've seen in the Big Ten is the offensive line that you start the season with, you rarely have by the end of the season. So to have 3 absolutely capable starters, three starters that were all Big Ten, is really good for this depth on the offensive line. Looking at the center position, we have Nick Dawkins, who everybody knows and loves. He is a Penn State icon, if you will. Everybody in the community loves him, and he does a lot of great things. And, I think now people are really excited to see what he can do on the field. I don't think he's been given too many great opportunities, and now this is his first shot at that starting center position. But on the flip side of that, I'm really excited for Cooper Cousins. This is a young freshman. He was the #1 center in his class, just early enrolled here. And from my understanding, already having a really good spring ball. I've been out there a few times. Big as can be, especially for a center, Jim. I mean, you saw him in person.
Oh,
You could speak
I
to it.
did. He's a big young man. He's a mountain.
Yeah, he is, and he's a real nice guy. But he puts the pads on, and he's gonna get after it. So I'm excited to see him kind of get into that mix, especially earlier on when you have a couple easier games. Get those young freshmen in the mix. So I think we're gonna have a good combination there of an older leader, an older veteran there, and Nick Dawkins starting at the center position, and then Cooper Cousins, which is more of the future at the center position, starting to get some game reps and game experience. And then bumping over to right tackle, what I am most excited about, I'm a big fan of his, is Anthony Donka. This kid was a freshman last year, came in, was a 3-star recruit, busted his butt, and he was actually at left guard the whole year. He was working behind me essentially, and I always sat next to him in the film room. I was sitting down with him, going over extra film, whatever he needed, working on technique. And obviously, I was away from the team a little bit this past fall. and they decide to move him one of these last weeks to right tackle. And for those of you that don't know, moving from left guard to right tackle your freshman year of college isn't exactly an easy feat. I mean, you're trying to get your feet under you. Everything's moving 1,000 miles an hour at you. It's not easy at all. So not only to switch positions on the line, but also switch from guard to tackle on the opposite side is really impressive. Caden Wallace ended up not playing in the bowl game at the Peach Bowl. Anthony Donka steps in his first career start at the Peach Bowl. No sacks, no pressures. I'm kind of excited, Jim, and I had spoke to this on a couple other podcasts. It reminds me a little bit of someone else, a younger tackle that got his first start in a bowl game and didn't allow any pressures, any sacks. I think that guy, he might be going in the top 10 here in the draft shortly.
I was going to say, whatever happened to him?
If anybody doesn't know, we're talking about Olu Fashanu. Got his first start in the Outback Bowl when Rasheed Walker, who's actually doing fantastic for the Packers right now, is going to be Jordan Love's blindside for a while. Rasheed Walker was not able to go, so Olu stepped in, had his first start, and had a very fantastic storied career here at Penn State. And I'm predicting a lot more of that for Anthony Donka. I think he's, really young. He's raw, but he is athletic with those same long arms that Olu has, 35, 36-inch arms, and has just unbelievable strength. I'm talking first time he came into the weight room, freshmen, those freshmen, they're putting up a little bit smaller numbers. We're kind of looking at them like, what are you guys doing over there? Well, I look over and we're at bench press max day, and Anthony Donka, I'm like, is that right? He has 4 plates on. This guy has 405 on as a freshman, and he's repping it out. And I'm like, okay, this kid's going to be special. I'm excited about this guy. And this is before he even put the pads on. So that is one guy I'm really excited about. And then kind of going through the depth, we got Nolan Rucci, obviously came from Wisconsin, and he was a big 5-star recruit that we had lost to Wisconsin. He was in my class in 2021. But adding him, a little bit of a project, going to have to put on a little bit more weight and continue to kind of refine that technique. But I think Coach Trout's track record speaks for itself. He has been able to develop some really raw athletic bodies into some really talented players. Obviously, talking about Olu, Rasheed Walker when he came in, Hunter Norzad. I mean, really, really talented guys that he brought the best out of. So I think this is a group that fits Coach Troutwine really well because they are dedicated, and like I said, these guys that are leaving have laid the groundwork for this offensive line, and they're excited and they know what the standard is, and they're chasing that Joe Moore Award, which is the best offensive line in the country, and I think they have the ability to do it, Jim. So I'm excited for this young group.
And what's exciting also is you mentioned not just starters, some potential backups, and you never even hit yet Javon Williams and Alex Birchmeyer, who are redshirt freshmen and very exciting, very highly recruited players also from the same class as Anthony Donka. So there's not just a present for this offensive line. There's a future also. You're really building something there, and you were part of that also, building that whole process. All right, I'm glad we got into some nitty-gritty Penn State stuff. Let's circle back to Behind the Wall. Just for our listeners, could you just go over where are the places people could find your information? They want to get behind the wall, get all the information you're putting out. This is your chance to promo. Where can they go and find everything from Landon Tengwall?
Yeah. So we are on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Twitter. We're on everything at Behind the Wall. It's, I'm going to be putting out clips everywhere, and then these full-length podcasts will be put out on YouTube for everybody to see. And I'm really excited to get a lot of engagement, man. Engage with these people. I want a lot of questions sent in. I want to be able to answer these fans' questions. That's something that I'm really passionate about, is bridging that gap between the fans and the players, and how having an understanding of, okay, I got to hear that guy just scored a touchdown. Well, I just got to hear about his background. I got to hear about how he came up as a kid, how he was raised. That's a fantastic kid. I'm so happy for him that he just got to score a touchdown. Versus you don't have any other information, you don't really feel much. So I think bridging that gap and allowing these fans to connect to the players is going to be a really cool experience because they feel more a part of it. They feel like, hey, that guy is cool. That's a special guy. He deserves all the great things that are coming towards him. And that's what I'm most excited about at Behind the Wall here is presenting these guys in a new and cool way to the fans, and allowing them to digest it and get to know these guys.
Well, Landon, as a fan and someone who has gotten behind the wall a bit already in the last half year or so that you and I have gotten to know each other, and you've introduced me to some of the players, and it's been exactly like what you're talking about. Trust me, uh, my experience with you has been fantastic. I really appreciate it. And again, congratulations on the new show. I'm excited. Thank you for letting me be a part of it. I'm looking forward to everything you're going to do.